Thank you for that topic. Normally, but it might be a bit wasted here, I don't know. I normally introduce myself by denying that my name is Jerry Adams and that I'm in any way a member of the Orange Order. So we begin with that as a small icebreaker. So, youth, yes, well, it's a very appropriate topic since you're also youthful. I can see that. It's very appropriate that we are celebrating on this Indian Independence Day the life and of Sister Nivedita, our Margaret Elizabeth Noble, born here in Dungannon. My thanks and acknowledgements to revered Swami Sarvalokananda for his visit and also his speech, for Sharada Basu, for
Sarkar, my second.
Oh, yes, okay. So we register that to mistake, never mind, move on.
That's in my Facebook.
But your inspiration, in fact, we can't say your inspiration, we can say that all our inspiration is divine inspiration for organizing or be the thought behind this. And of course, we also acknowledge and thank the chair councillor Wilson for honoring us with his presence, and we also would like to honor the sculptor here, who looks like a young man himself, but what skill and love he's put into this. And very appropriate, because Sister Nivedita had a weapon. It was the pen. That was her main weapon, and her words. So it's wonderful to celebrate this on Indian Independence Day, daughter of Ireland and honorary daughter of India. And in some ways she was more a daughter of India than anywhere else. Mother of the people, as Swami Sarvalokananda had mentioned. Sometimes we speak about personalities and we don't really know them. And so there's a wonderful summary of what Sister Nivedita would have looked like. Don't forget, Swami Vivekananda had already made a kind of portrait of her, looking for somebody who was educated, somebody who was sincere, somebody who had immense love. And then he ends off all his list of descriptions and attributes by saying, above all, somebody with Celtic blood. And we wonder what that means. Somebody who is feisty, somebody who is strong. Swami Vivekananda himself said India is not yet ready, her women are not yet ready, and so it remains the task of a foreigner to do this upliftment of women. Why? Because how do you uplift women, whether it's in India or any other third world country or developing country, is through education. That's the only way. And so there's a wonderful portrait that is given. This is by Patrick Geddes, who knew her well. The whole personality of Nivedita, her face, her voice, her changing moods and daily life, were ever expressing the alternating reaction of outward environment and inward spirit, which goes on throughout the individual and social life. She was open at once to the concrete and the abstract, to the scientific and the philosophic, and her many moods were in perpetual interplay, sparkling with keen observation, with humorous or poetic interpretation, or opal-like suffused with mystic light, aflame with moral fire. All came out in her talks, her occasional lectures, each a striking improvisation, now in gentle persuasiveness, leading her audience into sympathetic understanding, or even approval, or some aspect of Indian life unknown, or perhaps repellent before or again, bursting into indignant flash and veritable thunder upon our complacent and supercilious British Philistinism. This was somebody who knew her well. And we can just imagine this feisty, courageous person. So what is the relevance to youth? You have to be a rebel. Not a rebel without a cause, but a rebel with a cause. It takes great strength and individuality of spirit to go against the trend. So she was born, as the counselor had mentioned, she was born into a Methodist family. Those who are aware of Christianity will understand these distinctions. Methodism or Wesleyanism really is to do with preaching, to do with passion, to do with the ordinary folk, giving sermons in the open fields, not in churches. This was a revolutionary kind of thing, although not so much when you see the life of Jesus. And then all her education, Congregationalists. You may not know the distinction, but they were the people who championed things like the suffrage movement, things like abolitionism and so on. A certain spirit of freedom. And it is well known that her family were great advocates of freedom, national freedom, in a different way. So Sister Nivedita was always young, was always a youth. Bear in mind, only 44 years, or as I like to say, 44 free trips around the zodiac. And she left with spending her entire life dedicated to India, although in summary, physically, she would have only been in India about 6 years. But her endeavor would have been 12 years old. From her pen came prolific writings. Kali the Mother was her first book. The Web of Indian Life, Cradle Tales of Hinduism. And Patrick Geddes tells us, portrays a picture of her sitting on the floor, surrounded by children, kindergarten children, reading the cradle tales of Hinduism. For her education, in terms of her own education, in terms of her career in education, she had a revolutionary attitude. Education was not formal classroom. Education was expressive, covering every manner of subject you could think of, and employing state-of-the-art educational techniques of her day. And so she applied that in India when she got the message. In fact, her visit to India in 1898 was really delayed because she first met Swami Vivekananda 1895. What was the delay? Swami Vivekananda put her off, even though she was ardent and wanted to go. She was the eldest in a family, and the oldest is always a kind of leader of some kind. But like everybody else, when we see what are the most important things in our life, we do that as we get older. We see all these milestones. Most of us can divide our life up into fragments. When we up to the age of, say, 12, and then from 12, high school, college, and so on. And so if we look at Sister Nivedita's life, we see remarkable tragedies, where first of all we see that her father goes off studying theology at the Westgate College. Then we find at the age of 10, she loses him. And then, of course, she doesn't get deserted, but she goes into a school, boarding school,